All right, happy Friday. Good to see everybody. Hope you had a nice week. A little bit of a weird week coming off of Memorial Day, but hopefully everybody's back on track and it's officially summer, so we got to get it cracking and start doing some fun stuff, get to the beach, whatever it is, because 4th of July will be here in about a half hour. So as far as what I want to talk today is I just want to get into context. So again, talking about the reels and whatnot. So the reels obviously aren't the best source of information, but if you just try to educate on a reel, nobody's going to see it. Facebook or any of the platforms are not going to show it to anybody. So you have to bust some balls. You have to trigger some emotions. You got to do something to get the algorithm to show it to anybody, because if you're just teaching somebody, nobody gives a shit. It's boring. You have to have some sort of entertainment value. So a couple of my posts from this week that I want to explain myself, and I'll go further into this too, but one of them was the 5 exercises that suck for hypertrophy, and barbell bench, squat, deadlift, rows, and bench, squat, deadlift, rows, overhead military press. So those are the cream of the crop, the top of the food chain, the best exercises there are for building strength. Strength that definitely will translate into size gains. But as far as those lifts, those are the basics. We want to definitely master them. So the first 10 or so years of training, we want to really master those lifts and get strong and build a base. And as far as a hypertrophy standpoint, yes, you'll get bigger doing those lifts, but it's more so to build this base and this foundation of strength that is going to translate into hypertrophy with the other exercises. So, say we master those barbell exercises for a good 10 years, then after that, machines, cables, everything else will become more effective. And that also goes into my post about, if you're under 200 pounds, you have no business using XYZ cables, dumbbells, machines. And again, that's just an over-exaggeration to drive home a point to master the basics. So do you really need to be 200 pounds to touch a dumbbell? No. But I'm just driving home a point and using it to stir some emotion so somebody sees my post. Like if all I said was, master the basics, do these basic exercises, nobody's seeing that shit. So in terms of getting through your career, we want to master the basics, and, all those exercises are the best there are. But as we grow in our age and the weights start getting heavier and the wear and tear on our body gets greater, especially guys, my audience close to 40 years old, played sports, maybe definitely in high school, maybe in college, guys that are used to banging. And these are the type of guys that we need to protect. We need to protect ourselves from ourselves. So, when you have this mindset, you still want to grow, you still want to be crushing the weights on the squat, deadlift, and bench, but it gets to a period of time in your career where the risk is higher than the reward. And once the risk outweighs the reward, we want to switch out of those exercises. And it doesn't mean don't squat, don't deadlift, don't bench. It just means not with the barbell. And the barbell, we're in a fixed plane, we're in a fixed motion that we can't adjust. So if we're in an unfavorable position on a bench, you're going to tear your fucking pec. And, I also want, to leave myself as an example who went balls out with those lifts for probably a little too long. I ended up with a double patella tendon rupture. I couldn't move my legs for a year or drive a car for a year. That was absolutely awful. I don't want to see anybody going through that. That's, it's hell on earth, literally, especially for me, working out my whole life and going from being somewhat of a specimen to a human that can't walk for a year. Fucking awful. And then also during that time, I tore my pec and my bicep. Bench pressing, of course, bench pressing. Everybody tears their pec bench pressing. So I'm over here trying to warn you that there has to be a period of time that you're going to have to pull back from those things. And if you're 40 and you're still doing these things safely, comfortably, you're not injured, by all means, keep doing it. But once you feel like you're getting more hurt than progress, we want to bail. Or another option with those is, if you want to squat, bench, deadlift, whatever it is, maybe do it once or twice a month, every other week, things like that. So you can break up your volume and break up the beating that your body takes. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of emphasize those things that, to get my reels seen and for anybody to see, you got to bust balls a little bit and, be exaggerative and, go over the top. This is the internet. If I just say some boring shit or just try to teach you something, you're never going to see the post. Like 5 people are going to see it. But I'm pretty sure that was all I was supposed to cover. That, those are exaggerations. I've done the same with running last week, where running doesn't necessarily suck for weight loss, but the method in which people do it, it sucks because there's no progressive overload. They never get better. Their body become more efficient and they'll run this same distance with their body burning less calories than they did 5, 10, 15, 20 years prior. Was there another thing I wanted to bring up with that? I think that's about it. But yeah, I'm going to do some explanation on those and get a little more deep, because some people are like, oh, yesterday you said, don't squat. Today you're saying a squat. But everything is in context. Everything comes with the timing in your career and your body. Everybody's a little bit different. But for the most part, we want to master the basic exercises early on. Rinse and repeat, the mundane. I'm okay with you bench squatting and deadlifting it 3 times a week to master them early on. But again, later on, when we start getting more injuries than gains, we want to switch the exercises, Smith machines. And then also at this point, when you've developed great strength and some muscle size, these exercises will be much more effective. You know how to move, you know how to make the mind-muscle connection. So, and I think it also goes along with our egos and, our personalities, that we're a little more reckless, a little more macho in our 20s and the 30s, somewhat of a indifferent period where you're in between. Then hopefully by the time you're 40, you smarten up and hopefully you've not gotten hurt. And, you switch your exercises before it's too late and you're injured. So, but pretty much I'm just trying to stop people from landing where I landed with, horrific injuries where, I couldn't do anything for very long times. And, I'm not just talking about, going to the gym. I'm talking about I couldn't drive a car for a fucking year. So I'm looking out for you. I care about you. I care about people. I want the best for everybody. And I know I get like a decent amount of hate and body shaming and people saying ridiculous things to me on the internet. But I just want the best for everybody. And I'm coming from a place of love, 100%. So. All right, guys, have a nice weekend, and I'll catch you guys. And if there's anything you want me to post about or any questions you have, just drop them, and I'll do my best to help you guys. Thank you.